bust the show, bust the fat cable. We beat them folks, you know. Make the chicks boogie right up the front row. Pass the microphone like it's 82. That's one shot the house. What you been up to?
Been over here, been over there like Uncle Joey on Full House. Half L, half stout. The black and that blackout. Who get the party started like the Beastie Boys? The Public Enemy, Chuck D. Bring the noise. We've been all over the world, but we came back to you. Cause it's the two.
It's the two.
Undeniable crew. Now understand the Blues Brothers on a mission from God. The squad goal, restore soul. We beat the odds.
Make noise, have drinks, start half a ball. Make noise, put it in the air, half a ball. Make noise, have drinks, y'all, half a ball. Make noise, put it in the air, half a ball.
Man, you shake that can, baby, shake my hand. We land city to city and all across the land. Nothing but high five, so when we enter the place, we make a smoke on the treble and turn up the bass. Who could carry the torch better? Permanent trendsetter, the 16th letter, working better together. When you see the two-man band, decimate the stage. Take a picture timeline, controlling your front page.
And thank the sound man, cause we feeling the funk. Won't stop till the money long, dumbbells drunk. Backspin, the vinyl catch it on the one sire. Give it the jigger jigger dance floor on fire. High five, the cocktail in my hand. That's one double K, the two-man band. So I'ma just slide, breaking the law. Pass the cry line and I'm out, y'all.
Our little black letters, our little white cards. And when they see you got a official style, they be wanting to get loose about it. Style, technical best, get loose, cartoons, everything. That's filling in red, okay?
Hello?
Wherever I'm going.
Can we start the streaming?
Streaming is already running.
We do camera. Sorry, so the camera on stage. Okay. Thanks, Glenn. I'm going to start and then you. Hello, may I have your attention, please? So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Escape to the Future, which is the Escape final event. And we would like to welcome all our attendees, those that are in Brussels, but those that are with us online. We have around 200 people who registered for the event, and they are really looking forward to know what we have been pulling out during all these years since Escape's project started, which they were quite challenging years. We had very nice dreams. We have the challenging roles. In the meantime, we have to face a pandemic, but despite, all the issues, the work kept going on, and we are happy here together to present what we have been doing and share with you the highlights of the project. So how the day is going to be organized? First, we are going to start with Welcome Plenary, where we'll invite the SCAPE coordinators to be on stage, which are Giovanni Lamana, he's the SCAPE coordinator, and then Ian Bird, who is the SCAPE technical coordinator. After the Welcome Plenary, so we have dedicated sessions to each one of the SCAPE 5 services that compose the OSSR, and they are the SCAPE DIOS, SCAPE OSSR, SCAPE VO, SCAPE VO, and finally the SCAPE Citizen Science projects. After that, we will conclude this long day with a last session, which is a panel discussion, where we will call on stage representatives of the astroparticle physics community to be here and to share some insights on about topics. After this, what's going to happen? We are going to have our networking cocktail at the Dinosaur Gallery. It's going to start from 6:30 and last till 8 p.m. One very important information is that you as SCAPE participants, you are able to visit the Dinosaur Gallery during the networking talk cocktail. So it's up to you. You can go to the cocktail, go to the ground floor to check the Dinosaur main room, go up, and that's it. Another housekeeping information. So we have the catering room. Some of you were already there this morning. The coffee breaks and lunch will take place there. One important information, which is a rule from the museum. Foods and drinks should only stay there. So it's not allowed to bring foods or drinks outside of the room, okay? For the Wi-Fi, you have the open one from the museum. And I believe these are very useful housekeeping information. For the benefit for the online audience, they can also liaise with us. How? So there is a chat on Zoom. They can write there the questions, and when we are having the questions and answers moment, we will pose your questions here depending on the time we have available. So feel free to join us and to participate at the event wherever you are. And now I think it's time to start this conference. So I'd like to call on stage Giovanni and Ian, who will open this conference. And thank you very much for being with us these days.
Good morning. Does it work? Yeah. Allow me first to address my welcome to you all, our guests, the directors of the ESFRI project, as well as the members of the directorates of the RISE, members of the European Commission, of the EOSC-Association, colleagues of the ESCAPE consortium, members of the scientific community in the room, as well as online connected. As it was said, this is one of the last, among the last deliverables of our RAGE 2020 project, is the conclusive event. But it is called Escape to the Future, and I couldn't have imagined that 4 years ago in 2018, when we were structuring the program, today we would have been discussing about how structuring the future and acknowledging that the ESCAPE as well as the other clusters are going to have, are becoming important players in open science and the European research area. I wanted to dedicate this introductory talk to explain why it was a wager at the beginning and it became a human adventure, the ESCAPE project. It was already a wager at that time when we had the capacity, or we proposed the ESFRI projects and landmarks plus some more pan-European world-class infrastructure from astronomy and astroparticle physics to join together. From the ESO infrastructure with ELT, first of all, EST for the solar astrophysics, JAVI for radio astronomy, chemistry network from neutrino, as well as the scale for the radio astronomy. We consider also the participation of European teams, research teams in LSST Vera Rubin, as well as for gravitational waves, gravitational wave astronomy, Virgo, EGO. We had CTA for the high energy gamma ray astronomy, and also the request from the directorates of CERN for the high luminosity landmark, as well as FAIR for the accelerator-based particle and nuclear physics project. We succeeded to bring together all these major world-class projects with, at the end, a series of national institutes associated to all these projects for a number of 31 partners. And we were supported also by the consortia of national institutes, namely APEC, Astronet, ECFA, and NUPEC, the chairs of which, together with one representative from ESA, participated into the external advisory board that represented an important board for us for steering or participating in steering of the program of our consortium. Let me also go back in time to underline that the title of this slide is exactly the title of the call at that time. We were invited to connect ESFRI infrastructure through the cluster tool, the cluster project. And the aim at the time was really to support the open data intensive driven science in order to raise the productivity of researchers and to lead to new insights and innovation. The approach that was also requested aimed at fostering the establishment of a cross-border and open innovation environment. This is obviously bridging the barriers among the research infrastructure partners, as well as among the participants to the challenges of our project, physicists as well as data scientists, engineers, computer scientists. The approach also considered the need of developing synergies and complementarity between the involved ESFRIs, and for adopting global standards, common solutions. That at the end, we have to also admit the need shared by the national institutes as well as by the directorates of the ESFRIs to have a common solution for economies of scale for data management. What the Commission wanted to have through the cluster project, through this cluster project, was that we help the RIs in committing or establishing their policy for open science in a very large meaning. That, first of all, means implementing the fairness of scientific data stewardship, where fair is fundable, accessible, interoperable, usable, as I suppose you know. And then through such an approach, linking the ESFRIs and other world-class RIs to the European Open Science Cloud. At that time, this was the logo of EOSC in 2018, and we have also to remind to all of us that EOSC was a concept, was a political decision approved by the Council, and the European Union member states wanted to support the open science through EOSC. And the EOSC declaration had this sentence: EOSC should be considered as a data infrastructure commons, serving the needs of scientists and federating resources. Was at the time where we prepared the cluster. There was not any EOSC, probably there's not yet an EOSC really fully deployed, but this was the situation at the time. And the challenge or the wager for us was really to understanding what were the needs in our community and how to conceive our participation in interpreting such a EOSC concept. The needs were there, obviously, the sustainability the long-term curation of data, their open access, and even globally, were more and more important for the next generation of astronomical observatories, as well as the new generation of nuclear and particle physics facilities. We know also that the next generation project altogether are becoming generators, and I add also consumers of data volumes at the scale of exabytes. And one important element that we know is that our community at large was already traditionally implied in pushing the state-of-the-art of information computing technologies, data management solutions for the benefit of our science. So this was quite specific for our domain and was in common between astrophysics and particle nuclear physics. Then we wanted to leverage some important excellences or expertise, the Astronomy Virtual Observatory from the astrophysics community, as well as the expertise in large-scale data management, distributed computing, and high-energy physics. The challenges that were ahead of us when we decided to build the cluster, I said before, there was a need also required by national agencies, because we have national agencies supporting in different countries a series of those areas that we have seen in the previous picture. And they were asking some further cooperation crossing the borders of the areas for economy of scale. Obviously, there was also a challenge of bridging sociological barriers, bringing astrophysicists and particle physicists working together. And this was done successfully by keeping in mind that there was a request and there was really an expectation from the new generation researchers that love and would like to work in an environment that can interpolate data coming from different resources, different sources. As we said, deploy the multi-probe approach for fundamental research, that even further than the multi-wavelength, multi-messenger approach in astrophysics. And these young generations were also asking to work together to support the cross-fertilization among physicists, data scientists, as we said before. We understood that we had also as a challenge to deliver at some point a sort of virtual research environment, a place where we can have a working environment for science, for research, even on top of such environments that are going to be deployed per each single array, per each single ESFRI. And then we wanted also to provide our contribution in the implementation of the EOSC concept at the time, and interpreting and fostering the domain-based concept of open science that many times also within our internal discussions become a sort of synonymous of science for society. From one sense, we used to say mostly open data-intensive research, and from the other side, for us, open science is really a commitment that we have as a community towards society in different ways. Through data, obviously. And this is the picture that you probably know that summarizes the blocks of the work program of ESCAPE. We built the program considering the way we wanted to implement our open science domain-based paradigm. We needed to develop a common scalable federated data infrastructure for the interoperability of data. We needed to help the ARIES in deploying their own science platform by tailoring a template of a platform based on minimum services that are common for all. And then we took care about how the users, how the scientists, and not only the scientists, are accessing such a universe. From one side, we wanted to consider the training, the co-development of software, as well as the provision of repository for the scientific software and the data sets. And from the other side, we wanted to leverage the existence of the virtual observatory, exploit such expertise for the standardization of fair data, as well as bring also virtual observatory towards the challenges of the next generation large infrastructure. And finally, to complete and to be coherent with this idea of interpreting open science as a societal commitment, we wanted to consider and support citizen science project, and looking forward also to deploy a sort of citizen science infrastructure. And this is what from the beginning, we said that since at the end are the achievements of our program, as well as the structure of our program, this has to be presented as an EOSC cell. Is our way to interpret back in 2018 to interpret the concept of the European Open Science Cloud. Where we are today is an EOSC with a new logo, as you see. In 2022, we have an EOSC-Association, which is a legal entity established with more than 200 members, and I underline that the majority of them are university and research institutes. And now in their declaration, we see that the EOSC-Association declares EOSC being, the objective is advancing open science to accelerate the creation of new knowledge, inspire education, spur innovation, and promote accessibility and transparency. But what makes us a little bit proud is the fact that today, the declared ambition of EOSC is the web of fair data and services for science in Europe. This means that 4 years ago, when we considered that everything has to be deployed by ESCAPE as a sort of EOSC cell, web-oriented with a dedicated virtual research environment, is totally compliant or aligned with the new vision of EOSC today. Now, between 2018 and 2022, we have experienced really an adventure, because at the beginning there was a natural acceleration of the pan-European infrastructures to have their role in the cloud, because the EOSC was presented as a data infrastructure. This was normal. But then in the so-called ecosystem of EOSC, we realized that there was a lack of science at the end, absence of scientists, or very limited presence of scientists. And at that time, we were around 2019, 2020, the science clusters, included ESCAPE, started cooperating with the ESFRI, European Commission EOSC Task Force, really to envisage, to enhance the research participation and to participate in a way to guarantee that the EOSC architecture and the EOSC services at the end would be useful for us, useful for scientists and for science. And such an adventure has important results and milestones that were not expected at the beginning. Since we were motivated in the discussion with the Commission, with the discussion with the ESFRI task force, the ESFRI chair of the ESFRI board, immediately we decided not to run after the different surveys, but edit a position statement at the beginning. And then we were followed up by the other classes, and we had an edition of the 5 position statement. Then we start working together with other clusters, and finally in the summer 2021, we had a dedicated workshop with the publication of a common position statement about the expectation on the long-term commitments of the classes in EOSC and the European research area. And this was an exceptional human adventure for the clusters, that have, as you can see here, produced a really fruitful collaboration. In terms of adventure, in terms of human adventure, I can list many examples of collaboratory works that we were able to support, many successful training actions. I'm convinced that my colleagues in the next talks will refer to some of them, but one among all I want to mention here with these numbers that show how we were able, even during the COVID-19 pandemic, to propose the Escape School, the summer school, that was attended by many people around the world, online, obviously. And I have the feeling that I can say here that this is another example of an exceptional human adventure, because we have really supported our community that were working at home, from home, online, and also a large satisfaction we felt in proposing something that were responding to the expectations of researchers. And then there are other also satisfaction, seeing that we were acknowledged from the beginning 2020 as an example of real synergistic cooperation scheme in the deliberation document of the update of the European Strategy for Particle Physics, where the community stressed the importance of supporting the developments in computing, in software, in data management, and the relevance of the synergistic approach. Thanks to these collaborations with the Commission, with the ESFRI, you can read by yourself in the two recent documents published by the ESFRI in 2021, respectively, the roadmap, the update of the roadmap, as well as the landscape analysis, how the 5 clusters are presented and considered and acknowledged as a successful approach in making science happen. Consolidation of the European research infrastructure landscape, as well as example of scheme for new coordinated focus by ESFRI. And this is relevant for us for the future, that I will have the honor and the pleasure to talk about tomorrow, because indeed the escapes, the clusters are acknowledged as tools and framework for also addressing new focus. What matters is that these new focus are responding to the expectations of the scientific community at large, and brings the participation in the most inclusive way of the community at large. Then one more example of the importance of the cooperation between the science clusters is also the one that went also towards bridging with the infrastructures. These 5 infrastructure, EGI, UDAT, OpenAir, the agent, were leading the EOSC Future project, in which the 5 science clusters participated, obviously to work together on developing the so-called EOSC core services useful for everybody, but in the same time proposing to support science projects, because, as I said before, there was the need, even top-down, not only bottom-up from the cluster, to bring scientific content in the EOSC action. And we succeeded in parallel in getting the support and participating to EOSC Future. Such a support is about 250 person months dedicated to a pilot project of open science. Those are the test science projects with the 2 aims. One is to demonstrate the validity of the ESCAPE EOSC cell for the different services, and at the same time demonstrated how we can by this science project, by open science, we can really benefit real science goals, and exploring synergies between ESFRIs among the communities. And in order to do this with a certain level of coherence, we decided to support strengthening the multidisciplinary collaboration among young researchers around 2 main subjects. One is the dark matter science project, and the second one is more largely extreme universe science project that are aligned with initiatives or actions that were supported jointly by ECFA, APEC, and NUPEC, the JENA consortium. So I come to the conclusion just reminding that after this introductory talk, you are going to have the next talks that will, during all the day, will showcase the achievements of the project. In the second day, we are going to focus more on the science projects that will continue after the end of the project, of the ESCAPE project that is expected by February next year. And in between today and tomorrow, we are going to have two panel discussions. In the first one, we will have the occasion from one side to have a word from the European Commission that will tell us about the priorities in the European research area, as well as how much important was the value of our action for some of the ESFRI partners. While the second day, the panel that will conclude our conference will be more oriented in understanding how the science clusters together, we have invited the coordinators of the other four clusters and the representative of the EOSC-Association, the European Commission, how they are going to play a role and in which direction we have to go to operate in the era and continue bringing scientific content in EOSC. I stop here and I thank you. I think I have to leave the room to...
Yes, we'd like to call now Ian on stage, please.
Okay, thank you. How does it work? All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we still have to do before the end of the project, and the relationship to the EOSC itself and the EOSC Future project. So if we go back to what Giovanni just referred to as the EOSC cell, this pretty much sums up the things that we were trying to do when we set out with the project. So we have, and one of the things that we recognized at the time was that there was a significant concern about the magnitude of data volumes that we would get in the new generation of experiments. So one of the focal points was really trying to understand what a scalable data infrastructure would look like and how that would work, not just for a few of us, but for the community in general. And so the features of that were really to connect that with the existing experiments, the upcoming experiments, but also to connect with the underlying infrastructures, which you see labeled here as the computing and networking and storage infrastructures. That is positioned together with things like software infrastructure, and we'll come back to that because that's something that we see as extremely important for the future, which has resulted in a whole set of processes and products which are around the area of software, tools, and so on. And these things underpin where the science happens. So there were a number of existing science platforms related to the research infrastructures that came as the project partners, but we also put together work packages that deal with new tools for scientific analysis. The virtual observatory was its own work package with the goal of bringing the virtual observatory and all the history of work that's happened there into the EOSC framework, and also citizen science as a research tool as well as a communication tool. And as Giovanni just said, we added somewhat late in the project the concept of the TSPs, the science projects. That was really to validate that what we're doing actually delivers science, and science in a cross-domain manner, but it's also where we try to validate what's happening inside the EOSC, because these science projects are co-funded with the EOS Future project. So let me just list a few of the high-level key project results. And I think one of the aspects of this is that all of the work that we've done is really being picked up and used, and the intention is to use them in future in the research infrastructures. So the first one is that we really did prototype a full exabyte scale data management system based on an EOSC AAI, so a federated AAI, which is moving forward together with the rest of the community. And that's really been validated by the research infrastructures in the project through a number of significant data challenges. And I think Xavi will talk about these later, so you get a lot more detail about that. The second aspect is that we have developed this catalog to publish the digital scientific products of ESCAPE and the ESCAPE communities, and that's in the process of being onboarded into the EOS portal. In fact, if you understand the EOS portal enough to know about the EOSC Explore aspect, you can already see the contents of our catalog there. We have developed interoperability standards for astronomy data. So this is really, through the virtual observatory, enabled a virtual research environment of interoperable tools and services based on standards through the international collaboration there. And those, I think, we're in the process of trying to understand how that will be integrated as a whole catalog into the EOSC. So there is the work package that worked on the analysis tools. There's a reusable toolkit for integrating many different services and a virtual research environment prototype that integrates all of those services. And a number of our experiments and research infrastructures are really using those tools to set up or develop their analysis frameworks. And we've also, I think one of the significant outcomes is that there's a lot of training materials and successful workshops and schools that have happened, which is really something that needs to be continued into the future. And there were a number of citizen science projects built upon the ESCAPE developments using the ESCAPE tools, and those themselves have also attracted significant interest and involvement. And as was said, these dark matter and extreme universe science projects are proposed as demonstrations of real open science in ESCAPE, and the mechanism through which we demonstrate that we can be integrated completely with the EOS platform. So how does ESCAPE contribute to the EOSC? So in the immediate future, to the end of the EOSC Future project, so this is the third quarter of next year, we will continue to share the ESCAPE products through the EOSC, enable the reuse of what we've done, hopefully with broader exploitation through other clusters, not physics or astronomy, and in order to encourage open science and the use of fair data in our community, but also in others. The science projects will really be developed and have to deliver science as well as being demonstrators of cross-domain working together, as well as being validators of EOS. They have to deliver some science to us, and this is important. We will continue to integrate EOSC services both at the core and exchange level. I'll explain what that means in a minute, with our ESCAPE services. And we will, and I think this is important, contribute to the technical architecture of the EOSC and make sure that that's appropriate for what we need for our own infrastructures. And together with the other clusters in the following few years, we are working together to prepare the next generation of projects for the consolidation of the clusters, but also specific open science projects, And also around the area of software, not just software quality, but something which we have recognized together with the other clusters is really important, is that training, career development for scientists who are working in software and computing is really a key issue, and that's something that we will work with the other clusters to develop. So let me spend a few minutes on the EOSC architecture because it kind of illustrates some of the important points that we have to remember. So this is a model that was developed during the proposal period for EOSC Future, and you can see it's divided into sort of several different pieces. So at the top level, it's us, it's our science communities, it's the researchers, it's the existing research infrastructures that we have, it's the ones that have been running for many years or just being set up. We have specific domain-specific or thematic services in there which are not going to go away. We have our own workflows, we have our own software, we have all kinds of things there. And we have, of course, dedicated resources which are funded specifically to do those science tasks that have been agreed and approved. So that's not going to go away, that will stay, but the hope is that this becomes more and more integrated with the underlying pieces. Now, you heard me talk about the EOSC core in EOSC Exchange, so this bottom part of this diagram is what's called the EOSC core. And there's two pieces to this. One is the sort of underlying technical platform. And in order for this to really be core, this is things that shouldn't change too often. It's things like a federated authentication authorization infrastructure. It's the resource catalog and the marketplace. It's things like help desk, monitoring, and accounting. Things which everybody needs. And if a research infrastructure is setting up today and it doesn't have some of those things, it can make use of those. For the rest of us, we can integrate with those. So at the level of the core services, these are things like AAI should only change once in a generation because you really don't want to do this too often. On top of that, there's another piece which is sort of service management, onboarding of services, security coordination, things which everybody needs and everybody can make use of. On top of that is what's called the exchange layer. And this is really services which are coming, or tools which are coming from our communities, but also from other external projects, such as some of the regional EOS projects, such as our clusters, other clusters, but also specifically funded projects which are outside of EOSC Future, or EOSC itself, which is labeled here the 07 horizontal services. So this is a number of projects which are funded to provide resources to EOSC. And so the idea is that things that we develop, for example, our data lake, we could publish into the EOSC Exchange and say, here is something that we think is successful, it's available for you to use. So it's that kind of thing. So this, I think the exchange layer is really where, if you're setting up a new experiment or a new research infrastructure, you can come and say, well, these guys have already done this, I can pick this up, maybe I have to adapt it, but this is, I can browse through all of this and pick what I need to do my work. And this is supported by what's called the interoperability framework, which is a set of guidelines, APIs, which help you understand how to put all these services together and glue them to yours. So how do we exploit ESCAPE through EOSC and specifically through the EOS Future project? Well, the first part is the AAI. So we have in ESCAPE a well-developed AAI, which is called IAM. It is now part of the Federation. We had to do some additional work to make that happen, but that's in place and tested. As it stands today, we can do one-to-one interaction. So with an ESCAPE credential, you can use, for example, EGI resources. There is a piece missing, which is being developed, not just for ESCAPE. This is for all of the science communities have to do this in order to do many-to-many interactions in the AAI Federation. So that's actually, if nothing else happens, that's already a major step forward, because it means that any scientist in Europe can have access to all of the applications and all of the services of EOSC with a single credential. And then we have a number of what I called self-contained open science objects. So we have, first of all, we have this OSSR catalog, which is our open science software and service catalog. As I said, this has been onboarded into the EOSC Explorer. We're waiting for the release of another piece of software in EOSC, or in EOSC Future, in order to fully onboard that into the EOSC marketplace, but that's coming like in the next few days. And this is really scalable for ESCAPE, because what it means is once that catalog is onboarded, anything that we do as ESCAPE can simply be published into the OSSR, which we know how to do, and it automatically appears in EOSC. So I think this is exactly the right strategy. What we have to do before too long is make sure that we have put into the OSSR all of the software, tools, and other things that we really want to publish. So, for example, the tools of the data lake need to be added into this catalog. And then we have a couple of things which are more like portals in themselves. We have the virtual observatory, and we have the High Energy Physics Open Data Portal. Now, both of these are complete services. They provide data, tools, software, tutorials, a whole universe of things. And somehow we have to onboard these into the EOS. But we will onboard them as complete packages. So what it means is, again, it's scalable for us because they belong to the communities where they need to be. We don't have to move data, which would be quite a significant cost for everybody involved. But it means that these things will be easily accessible and findable through the high level of the EOSC portal. So these are things that we really need to work on. There are tools which are just about to be released in EOSC Future to enable that. So that is something that we also need to do. But once we've done these three things which are on this page, ESCAPE is largely integrated in the sense that all of what we've done and what we will do will be available within the EOSC environment. One of the other things that we have to think about doing is how we integrate the EOSC core services with ESCAPE. So AAI we've already done, as I mentioned above. The other core services which are really interesting and important are the help desk, the accounting, and the monitoring. So with the help desk, I think the ESCAPE strategy is quite straightforward. We should create support units for the science projects, but for the research infrastructures that already have well-developed help desks, these can just be connected with the EOSC help desk, which just means that tickets can be exchanged between the help desks. And this is something that several of us have done in previous projects, in previous infrastructures. We know this works, so this is quite straightforward. The other aspect, if you're setting up a new experiment and you need a help desk, you can immediately just use the EOSC core service directly, and that will automatically be integrated with all of the other services that you need. So that's possible. You can also set up your own independent help desk and integrate it. Monitoring and accounting, also fairly straightforward. This only needs to be done at a high level. Lots of the research infrastructures in ESCAPE have existing monitoring and accounting services. So we just need to do some data exchange at a high level to share information about what's being used. In particular, if we use EOS-funded resources, we really have to make sure that we publish the use of those. And again, new research infrastructures can use the EOS core services directly or implement their own. And also services that we onboard into the EOSC, we do have to monitor and account for the accesses via the EOSC environment. probably what's a little bit more interesting is the use of the exchange level services. So the immediate potential use is firstly to get resources. So this is really physical resources, compute and storage. And the integration of that through our science projects is currently being tested. So these resources have been made available through these, what I called these 07 projects, in particular one called EGA ACE. And these use the federated AAI to provide access. We have resources for ESCAPE provisioned at INFN through this mechanism. We also have storage, which I think is provisioned at CESNet, if I'm not mistaken, which we will integrate with our data lake in terms of cloud storage. And we really just need to make sure that we can combine the use of our own resources with these EOSC provisioned resources. And there are other things coming, so I think everybody agrees that things like a common notebook service would immediately be interesting and useful for everybody. But there's potential interest here because this can integrate the back-end compute and storage. So just a word on the deployment of the science projects in EOS Future. So this is starting. I think one of the things that we really need to focus on in the next few months is deploying parts of the sub-projects on EOS resources. So for example, we have data in the ESCAPE data lake. You want to run workflows on compute provisioned through EGIA's cloud resources and access through the AAI. Move data between the data lake and those compute resources with that single credential, but do it transparently. Potentially integrate the use of HPC. We've demonstrated that in a sort of one-off, but we need to integrate that into the workflows. Other things demonstrate full workflows combining ESCAPE and EOS services and resources, including the use of the core services, which I just mentioned. And then really show that we can publish scientific outputs of this, which is not just sort of publication level stuff, but also the software and data into the EOSC via our own services. And there's a clear goal to have at least some of these pieces ready to demonstrate at the EOS Future Review, which is at the end of November. Now, some of these are already working in many senses, so that needs to be brought together and polished, but I think there is a clear timeline here to demonstrate some of this. And what can ESCAPE bring to EOSC? So I think ESCAPE represents a broad set of communities with significant technical requirements and expertise. We have an exabyte scale data management, which we've demonstrated, and that's backed by experience over quite some significant time, and it's been evolved and validated in ESCAPE for the next generation of exabyte scale data generating experiments. I mean, high-level, high-LUMI LHC and SKA are really multi-exabytes a year, and others of our experiments are in the order of many petabytes, 200 petabytes a year. So these are really significant data generators, probably more than most other of the clusters. We have experience in operating globally federated compute infrastructures. We have long-term expertise in the reliable operation of those things and support of federated infrastructures. And we have expertise and experience in all aspects of collaborative software and computing. And there needs to be, in the future, focus on performance and efficiency, which is totally relevant for some of the goals around energy efficiency. And as I mentioned earlier, this initiative on career development and training, particularly for scientists involved in software and computing, is going to be something that's important, not just for us, but for all of the other clusters as well. I'm just going to mention this. I'm not going to read all the names out, but many of the ESCAPE partners have people that have been part of EOS task forces which have defined and developed the policies and the technical requirements of the EOSC. And so there's a lot of effort from our community and other communities, but this is just listing the ones I could find, and I apologize if I've missed somebody, people from institutes in our community that have contributed this, and I think you'll agree this is quite significant level of effort here. Okay, so with that I'll finish. So I think we've successfully delivered on our technical objectives. There is a significant synergy between our communities, which we've uncovered as we've gone through this collaboration, and that will continue in the new collaboration, which I think is really important for us. The integration into the EOSC is proceeding. We have specific objectives to do that. The science projects will validate, again, our capability for open and cross-domain science, but in an EOSC environment. And together with the other science clusters, we really have to ensure that the technical direction of EOSC helps to deliver open science. And what I mean by that is something which I think comes with the experience we've had over the last many years, in that it's dangerous to set up an e-infrastructure that you don't think is going to evolve. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think that this separation between the core and the exchange is important, because the core are relatively stable services which everybody can rely on. Whereas as you well know, when you're doing science, the experiment changes, the software changes, the technology changes, and you really have to adapt almost on a daily basis to this. And if you are trying to convince an e-infrastructure that it needs to change something, this is going to be a problem. So I think the separation between the core and the exchange is important, but I think it's also important that the science clusters and the science RIs have a lot to say about the direction of the infrastructure and where we go with that. And so with that, I'll finish. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much, Ian and Giovanni, for your presentations. Now we invite you to go back to your seats. We don't have online questions. Is there any questions from the audience before we call the next panelists? It doesn't seem so. So thank you for being here. Now it's time for the Scape DIOS, which is one of the Scape services, and I'd like to call on stage Javier and the other delegates, please.
Good morning, everyone. So let me start my short introduction of the session by giving some thanks to some people in Work Package 2. First of all, my partner in crime, Rosie Bolton, the task leads that were helping me guiding this work. Also Giovanni and Ian for the focus and the support on the task. My Work Package leads for the fruitful discussions during all of this time, and more important, all of you, science, the sites, the software providers that made this adventure, I would say, quite interesting and I would say quite a big success. So thanks to all of you for contributing to this. So Ian mentioned and showed this picture of the EOS cell, and if you have seen, the data lake is at the core of it. The data lake can be seen as a data infrastructure which basically put in place the things which are required for science to put data in a place. This data is secured, is distributed, you can apply policies, and then this data can be delivered to any of the consumers. It could be computing, it could be users in notebooks, it could be HPC facilities, it could be clouds. So the idea is to have something which seems simple, but can be as complex as you want if you had really high-level data management needs. So to illustrate it a bit more, this is the schema of what is the ESCAPE data lake, you see that in the center of this picture, if I manage to do this well, so you still hear me like this? It's okay? So in this center part are really the resources, the disks, the networks, and all the things that basically the glue that put together all the resources, which are harnessed by a data management and file transfer service of high level. Of course, there is an entity which is fundamentally important, which is a global and common authentication infrastructure. But the idea is that this thing seems like a big blob, a big cloud, a big lake where people put the data. Where this comes from? So are the sites in the ESCAPE DIOS Work Package 2 were the one that were procuring the resources. All of these sites put disks, put tapes, put solid-state disks, put the resources where to exercise all the concepts that we wanted to push in the project. We got a high-level data management system, which is Rusho. So is the catalog, is the namespace where people put the data. You put the replication rules, you put the ACLs, you describe very lightly the metadata, and this entity makes sure to keep the consistency and applying those policies at the global data infrastructure, not only in one storage, but at the whole complex of storage services. Then a high-level file transfer service, which moves data from one point to the other, third-party orchestration. So this ensures the integrity and the consistency of these policies. And then some information management system where the sites can put their access points, their protocols, their port, et cetera, et cetera. All of this working kind of in a similar way. What is important is, I want to emphasize this, is that through the data lake, we can connect this data, this big data from the experiments, multi-exabyte, multi-hundred of petabytes that your experiments need to produce at the service of different compute processing resources. Could be from the user analysis to different platforms. Ian mentioned quickly the HPC centers, which is something which is of common interest. And really, what we need to connect these big centers of computing, clouds, and HPCs is the idea to work on content delivery and caching systems to put the data close to these compute resources. Okay, so this is a high-level overview. I don't want to forget AAI. AAI, as mentioned by Ian, should be a common thing, not only in computing and the data lake, but everywhere. This is the first building block to have a common infrastructure, is a global level of trust. And this we are pushing forward in other projects, just to homogenize the way that we do authentication authorization. Okay, what was the EOSC roadmap? We start very happily, we did the kickoff, this doesn't go back. Yes, we did the kickoff in early 2019. We basically brought the work plan. We built an initial data lake. It was around August, but the things get mature quite quickly. So in November 2020, we did what we call the FDR, which is the acronym for a full rehearsal, but basically all the science in ESCAPE started to put data in the data lake. In some cases, it was so important, like the MAGIC telescope, the telescope which is in La Palma Island. The buffer that is in the telescope was managed by Rusho. So the data was consolidated from La Palma to the central data lake instance and then spread around to several sites. So this is one example, but all sciences make use of an early data lake, which we call the pilot data lake. So we identified, of course, the things that could be improved, things that are more important for the experiments, things that we wanted to push a bit more in terms of analysis and data processing. And then our work plan basically consolidated in a second and final challenge, which we call data and analysis challenge, because we wanted to make sure also to be able to certify that we can deliver the data and we can provide the data to analysis platform and compute resources. So not only the data life cycle from the sources to the data lake, but also delivering the data to analysis platform. Together with John from Work Package 5, together with other colleagues, we're managing this and also spanning through the work package. So by the DAC 21, which is the data analysis challenge, we had certified the working infrastructure. The experiments ran really complete workflows. You will listen a bit more from my colleagues here, and I will give a bit of a hint later. So this basically prepared ESCAPE as a good example, because it provides the framework for the experiments to really experience what is a high-level data management system, how they can do data management, file transfer service in a reliable way, and has a playground to play on technologies at the point that also at some point in this final exercise, there were some experiments that deployed their own data lakes, so they were working together and experimenting firsthand tools that might be of interest and they might be implementing in the next, in next year in the experiments. So it was basically a huge milestone. And of course, since the summer, we are preparing ESCAPE for this post-ESCAPE scenario in terms of the collaboration agreement, which is, I would say, basically crystallizing the good synergies and the good sense of community that we harvest during this time. Okay, I would like to emphasize some points that were kind of key on the ESCAPE data lake evolution from a pilot to a full prototype. Really, the DIOS work plan focused on a continuous assessment and evolution of this concept, with a target really to meet the experiment, the research infrastructure requirements. Our periodic meetings every 2 weeks with all of you, with experiments, the sites, the software developer, basically nurture this kind of bottom-up approach, and we were addressing the needs of the community. An example was the token-based authentication. We started the data lake with grid certificate just to get the ball rolling. The token-based authentication started to grow. It's not yet finalized because we have some storage that still has some struggles and we need some more interaction. But there are full workflows that we're running through the tokens, and it's one of the things identified for the future. We managed also to accommodate full data life cycles, introducing a quality of service from the experiments buffers, from the data taking, to have a kind of reliable way of redundancy, multiple copies, what we called, we started to accommodate what we call quality of service. Raw data need to be preserved, say tape, then analysis product might be transient, so you put it in a different quality of service, erase your coding. So we basically map the cost of data with the storage, with the storage implementation, allowing some experiments to run life cycles from data acquisition to reconstruction to analysis products, and every one of these steps matching the kind of storage that basically maps the value. Fast storage is very expensive. Tape storage is cheaper, so we need to adjust this, and even more in the years to come because of the change of magnitude. We were pushing quite hard on WebDAP HTTP protocol because it's something that I would say is commonly known as the best way to push data, not only on the storages but also to deliver the data to the sites. One fundamental thing was the evolution of Rusho. Rusho was very well known in LHC, in high energy physics, but it has been stretched and adapted to the needs of other communities. And the fact that now some representatives of these communities are influencing the development of this data management system is something we should be proud of. And the fact that some experiments already deployed some of these systems and they are going and they're under review. And some of them even they are used in the daily life. There is something interesting because it's what we wanted to achieve, a commonality of tools so the scientific communities could help each other, could foster this knowledge transfer, but also at the same time, the sites providing services to the experiment doesn't have to have a plethora of different protocols and tools, so they come with a coherent way to the site. So it's a major breakthrough for the sites providing computing and storage. Of course, we talk about the monitoring capabilities. There was a monitoring framework that was developed in ESCAPE. Also, one thing that we pushed forward is to set up a team that was taking care of the operations in the data lake. So they really put the people on the site and the experiments at the forefront of operating the system, gaining first-hand experience for the future possibilities of operating and implementing these experiments on the sites. It was a team that was especially active during the data challenges, meeting basically every week with channels like Slack or Rocket Chat in a EOSC environment, so we were all connected. And last but not least is the expanded data lake capabilities with user environments. Ian was speaking about this virtual research environment. We all know about this, the scientific analysis platform, analysis frameworks, analysis facilities. So the fact that we can leverage the big data from the experiment to this platform and this this kind of user-facing services is fundamental, and we basically also expanded on that. I mentioned very briefly this integration of heterogeneous resources. More and more we need to make use of clouds and HPCs. There were good work done, especially by Frederic Gilardo in this direction. So we explored commercial cloud users, integration with HPCs. Tommaso Vocali helped connecting Cineca HPC to the data lake through the content delivery. So this was explored and needs to be enforced. This is one of the future also in the scientific computing panorama. So at the end, so DIOS work plan brought together the scientific communities addressing collective goals in a common data infrastructure. And the various data challenges certified this system as a fully working system for the experiments. Very quick, so I will give some hints of some of the outcome of this data analysis challenge, just to mention and flash some of the things that were done by the experiments. There are 3 talks now that will really go in deep on that, but just to show that the community, the whole experiments in the work participation in Work Package 2 were really active, were really proactive, and were really doing interesting things and really forefront things in these data challenges. First, yes, I managed data injection. The data was stored in the data lake from 2 experiments. This data was processed by the users, the results were and then stored back in the data lake, closing a life cycle of really, I would say, daily life cycles that the experiments need to do. KM3net also manage their storage buffer in the coast. This is a neutrino experiment with phototubes which are in the sea, and manage the replication across the site in the data lake, ran some calibration streams, loaded back the products, and these products with the calibrated data were ready for consumption shortly after. KM3net deployed the Russia instance to manage this, all of this data orchestration, and is in production right now. For CTA, of course, I will give the floor to Gareth, so I will not spoil the talk. Atlas, and especially for the HiLumi project like Atlas, was exploring the open data capabilities, putting data on the open data portal, doing some analysis, storing back the results. So we're exploring these open science, open data capabilities that Diane and Giovanni were mentioning before, which is fundamental. SKIO, as a kind of future huge exabyte scale data producer and big experiment, were fundamental in Work Package 2. In the data analysis challenge, they set up their own Russia instances. They were managing data flows from our data lake and their data lake in Manchester, but connecting sites in Australia, connecting sites in South Africa, and this is even expanding. I was chatting with Rosie this morning. So they really certified a global scale, worldwide data management service across the world. Not mentioning that they were exploring also data lake as a service, analysis platform, and changing into it. So there was a major collaboration. I think if you were in the General Assembly and other talks, this was kind of explored in detail. For CMS, there was another aspect that was covered, this content delivery and caching of data. They were really putting the tools to interact the data lake with the high performance computing center in their site, including in the analysis workflows. It was in an area that it needs even more exploration because it's fundamental, a step further for the data lake. So I will give the floor now to my 3 colleagues. I think the first one is Gareth for CTA, and then I will close with a final slide at the end. So please, Gareth.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I'm going to report on the work done. I'm going to report on the work done by Trenkov Telescope Array Observatory and the MAGIC collaboration in the DIOS. Firstly, a quick shout out to my colleagues from LATPIC and CTAO who actually did the work. And secondly, I'd like to introduce the systems or experimental setups. So the MAGIC system consists of 2 70-meter diameter imaging atmospheric Trenkov telescopes, and they're able to reconstruct the energy and arrival direction of very high energy gamma rays in the energy range of 50 GeV to 50 TeV. They're located in Spain on the island of La Palma. And thanks to major, they've been operational since 2004, and thanks to major upgrades throughout their lifetime, they've been able to make fundamental contributions to our understanding of galactic, extragalactic objects, fundamental physics, and interestingly also transient objects. The Trenkov Telescope Array Observatory will be the first ground-based gamma ray observatory. Thanks to over 60 telescopes in its first initial alpha configuration, it will have a 10 times greater sensitivity and an order of magnitude higher in energy range, or wider energy range, than the current generation of instruments. It will have a 30-year lifetime, and thanks to 2 array sites, which you can see here in Chile, Paranal and La Palma, Spain, we'll have for the first time in one observatory of this nature full sky coverage. You can see here also on the map our headquarters in Bologna, under construction Science Data Management Center at the DAISY campus in Zeuthen, just outside Berlin, and we have an interim office in Heidelberg. So what's not shown here is the 4 data centers, which are listed here at the bottom, and they will be responsible, among other things, securing our data. So CTA will be an open, proposal-led observatory providing software and data to the science community. Therefore, you can see the setup for both systems is essentially the same. You're on a mountain, on an island, or you're in a desert. You're producing lots and lots of data. This data is transient in nature. You don't get a second chance. You can't just turn on your detector again and rerun it. If you miss it, you lose your data, you're in big trouble. So your data needs to be transferred securely, it needs to be backed up, and it needs to be processed. Therefore, in the DIOS, our use cases, what we proposed, basically essentially took data, raw data from the telescope, and provided it to the scientists, and that means going through ingestion, transfer, replication, and processing. We broke this down into 3 use cases: long-haul transfer, a processing, reprocessing use case, and an analysis use case. And I'm going to quickly step you through each one of those in turn now. So the first use case is the long-haul transfer use case. And this is essentially trying to get the raw data securely off the site. Now, during the work in DIOS, both LAP and PIC contributed storage elements to the escape data lake. But for this specific use case in the final data challenge, PIC set up MAGIC and CTAO specific Rusio instances. And that meant having, as Xavier mentioned, storage elements actually on the island communicating with PIC in Barcelona. The use case itself, we broke it down into many, many tests. And by doing this, we were able to ramp up as we explored the technology. We were able to separate out into different technologies, such as transfer protocols, different potential setups. And ultimately, the tests were successful. We were able to transfer the data off-site. We were able to replicate it. We were able to get it onto tape. All of this was done whilst it was being monitored. Here you can see an example dashboard of that monitoring process. And what was interesting for this use case is, with respect to MAGIC, is that this is a running system, and so that they were able to actually apply this technology to a system that was already in use. And for CTAO, it had the comforting knowledge that we were able to transfer the amount of data that an array site would produce per night in a 24-hour period. So that made us very happy for the future. The second use case, processing or reprocessing. Once you have your data off-site and secured and backed up, you need to be able to process it to make it ready for science users. Now, observations take place over multiple nights, maybe even years. They involve multiple files from multiple telescopes, and then you need to combine this with simulation data. This all gets processed by very complex workflows, and so everything needs to be handled by a workflow management system. CTAO, we use the Dirac workflow management system. And so in this use case, which was led by Lap and Frederick, we have to get this to play nice with the data lake. And this is essential for CTA. The Dirac operates with whatever data lake technology we have. There is already some work that has been done in the past by the Bell 2 experiment to try and tackle this problem. And so the initial work followed on from this. In the end, it was possible to use Dirac to interact with the data lake and process data using CTA workflows. However, the work done previously was very specific to the previous experimental setup. And so the focus of this use case became defining what was actually missing and what would need to be able to make this more general for either CTA or for users at large. And so this is something that we're looking at for future work. And finally, once you have your data processed and ready for scientists to use, you actually have to be able to analyze it. Both MAGIC and CTAO did an exploratory use case of actually analyzing data, or in the case of CTAO, simulated data. Both the ESFRI science analysis platform was used along with the data lake as a service. We'll hear more about those later. And here you can just see an example of a science project, a MAGIC sky map, and a simulated CTA spectra. So the result of all this work on the MAGIC side, MAGIC has upgraded the data transfer system from LAP to PIC using the Rusio client and the new scripts that were developed. The system is connected to the on-site data transfer databases and is currently in production mode. For CTAO, as I pointed out, we have 4 data centers for distributed storage, processing of the data, and hosting the software. And CTAO will evaluate Rusio as its baseline technology for its bulk data archive. For the future, well, the immediate future, tests are actually ongoing. Lots of sort of further questions that we got from the data challenge, interesting ideas that we wanted to try, other ESFRIs tried, we wanted to have a look as well. Some ideas, for example, priority data products. We would like to, if you catch a flare, you want to get that data off more quickly to have a first look. And you can see the list of topics here on the left. In the near future, we're really looking forward to working potentially with other ESFRIs on common topics of interest, such as the workflow management system, interoperability and embargo data, and that means looking at topics such as metadata and AAI, specifically tokens. So we look forward to working with other groups on these issues in the future, and we think that ESFRI speaking with one voice benefits everybody. And then finally, I'd just like to show all these names, too many to list now, but thank you all very much, and without your hard work, none of this would have been possible, and thank you for your time.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Fabio Hernandez. I am affiliated to INTP3 and based in Lyon, in France. And I will be presenting the use case of the Vera Rubin Observatory. So this science experiment is a little bit different from the others in the sense that it is not an ESFRI. It is an American funded project, but there are some European institutions like France, INTP3 in France, involved in the project, and this is what we are here. So the goal of the project is to build the most ambitious astronomical catalog ever attempted. So this is a little bit clickbaity as title, but it is really what we are aiming for. So the point is that you have a telescope, you collect images, and then you have to process those images to deliver 3 kinds of products. One is the alerts, so those are nightly. As soon as we detect that transient events in the sky, we emit alerts so that other experiments, other observatories take that information and act, like pointing to the place where those alerts are produced, for instance. And the other two kind of products are the science-ready images and the astronomical catalogs. And in the catalog, we aim to collect data about 17 billion stars and 20 billion galaxies. So this is significantly higher than we have already collected in other experiments. So basically, it is, as some of our LSST colleagues say, it is digitizing the sky, mapping the sky. And then we deliver these digital products to the science collaborations, and those science collaborations will be doing science with those products. So this is the big picture. So you need a few ingredients for building this. So the first thing is the observatory. So it will be located in Chile. It's being constructed. I will show you some pictures. Then you need the telescope, which is aimed to be agile, so that you can point to the sky very fast to collect as much images or as many images as you can. And then, of course, the camera, which is the instrument collecting data. So it is a really beautiful instrument. It is a 3 gigapixel camera. So I would like to have one like this in my pocket. So this is the observatory. It is being constructed. It's in the final phase of construction, so operations will start 2 years from now and will last for 10 years. So if you compare the size of the small cars, you see the magnitude of the site. And then, of course, I don't know why you don't see sorry, in the slide. There are some problems in the slide. There was some information there that hopefully you will find in the website. So this is the real camera. So the size is about 1 meter, and the focal plane is 65 centimeters. 3 gigapixel camera, and we will aggregate half an exabyte of data over the 10 years, 6 million images of the sky. So every point in the sky will be pictured 800 times. So we will be able to build a movie of any part of the visible sky in the southern hemisphere. So nice instrument. So it will be located in Chile, as I would say, and then the data is immediately transferred to California, to the University of Stanford University in California, and then it is the main site. And from that location, we will import the data to do data facilities in Europe, one in France, and one in the UK. And the processing of those images will be performed by those 3 facilities. So the French data facility will take care of processing half of the data, and the other 2 facilities will process the other half. And we exchange the products of the processing. So replicating the data among the facilities is an important part of the challenge that we have to meet. And this is why we focus our effort using the ESCAPE data lake on this particular problem. How do we exchange data efficiently among those facilities? So we performed replication of the equivalent of 1 night of LSST data repeatedly over 5 days, consecutive days. So we used a realistic data set as the one we are going to replicate. So we gave ourselves a budget of 12 hours, and this is because the night in Chile is on average 12 hours. And we used the data lake, the ESCAPE data lake products and tools for replicating the data. I mean, Rusio and FTS for driving the replication, and then the storage elements located in 2 of the ESCAPE sites. And we made the exercise of replicating data from CERN to INTP3 in Lyon to my site repeatedly. And we demonstrated that we managed to replicate a little bit less than 1 million files repeatedly without errors. So this required a lot of work. It's conceptually very simple, but when you have to do that, it means a lot of knocks to tune. So from my perspective, as a builder of one science project, the benefits of using a data lake was manifold, beyond the tools used for actually replicating the data. So the main point is that as a science project, when you have a data lake for you to use, that lowers the barrier to entry to evaluate several tools for solving your problems. So you don't have to think of how do I deploy this thing, which I need 10 machines to deploy and then test the whole thing. And this is very important, in my opinion, to accelerate adoption of tools that already exist, that probably you have to tune or to adopt or to modify, but things that already exist for you to test. And ESCAPE provided a forum to share experience, and that was really important for us. I will give you some examples, and the point is that we got inspiration from other science projects in how to use the tools we were sharing for solving our particular use case. We were able to get advice from the people developing those tools and from the people operating those tools on how to use them. And this is important for us also because you know that scientists are very creative people, and sometimes in those projects we try to use the tools in a very creative way that was not planned for by the developers. And in fact, during the challenges, we found in 1 week of challenge, we found 4 bugs in the tools because we were using those tools in a different way than the LSE experiments were using, for instance. And we got 4 patches from the developers for solving the problems until we managed to do the replication without any error. And this is significant. We wouldn't have the attention of the developers without having ESCAPE. So there's real value and direct value for the science experiments using this kind of infrastructure. So once we realized that those tools were solving were helping us solving the problem we had to solve, we deployed instances of those tools, Russia and FTS, in the US data facility, and we are performing transatlantic, this time, data replication among the 3 data facilities, and plugging our LSST-specific tools to Russia in order to get an integration of those tools into the specific data management tools of LSST. So for us, ESCAPE was a really wonderful platform for build something that will last with us for the next 10 years.
Okay. Is this the next? Which one is the next? This button? Or is this the previous one? No, the green one. Gosh, I'm way too colorblind for this. The big one. So thank you very much. I'll be Jan Grange. I work for the Netherlands Institute for Radio Astronomy, and I will actually give you some reflections on how we look at DIOS from the LOFAR point of view. I really like Garrett's slide about the team, so I thought, let me make a list of our team. But, well, our team is not huge. We had a lot of ambitions when we started the project, I think. We have had all sorts of ideas. So I coined us as a small team with big ambitions. Of course, we had a lot of support also from the other Astron ESCAPE participants, which I'm explicitly mentioning here, Klaas, John, and Hanno, who is more in the LOFAR operations side, who knows a lot about the actual data stuff we're doing in operations. So I will go for the LOFAR in one slide, though it's going to be a slide with several overlays. It's cheating a bit, I guess. So LOFAR, basically, it's the instrument is a radio telescope which consists of many antennas that are spread all over Europe. Actually, you see on the map where we have stations with antennas. Every dot in whatever color these dots are represents a
a location, and actually in the north of the Netherlands, for some reason the arrow has slightly moved up, but basically it should be here. There is actually the central location which you see imaged on the top left corner. So basically what do you do with radio imaging? Well, we are astronomers, right? We make pretty pictures, and we use these pretty pictures to do science. Of course, if you're doing a radio, another very important side that you always have to mention is timing, which is basically you have objects that change in time. For example, this is a typical pulsar, which basically is a compact object. It rotates very fast, and it has a beam of radiation on some of the ends, and every time the beam passes your telescope, you see a blip. You can analyze the blips and look at physics. And then from a scale perspective, I guess that the farthest away, largest scale we're interested in is illustrated by this. This is an image of the history of the universe, which starts on the left with a Big Bang, then the universe very quickly expanded. And then it was a very dull and empty place until you got stars. And these sort of first stars are actually one of the challenges for the instrument. On the other hand, we're actually also having, and this is actually stuff that has been imaged, is the lightning above the telescope. So you know the propagation of lightning in Drenthe is something that we have been working on. So let me put it a bit boldly: anything between the first stars and the lightning on Earth, we basically got it. Talking about versatility. So talking a bit about data management. So I think the first step in data management is to take all the data from all these antennas and bring it to a central location, which is in Groningen, to do processing and adding up the numbers and doing all sorts of stuff to actually get the raw data out of that. Well, that is a challenging process, but it's not really the type of data management we have been looking into for this specific project. After you do that, we are moving our data back into 3 locations. For some reason, we lost the Surf Sara logo, which is, so the data goes to Surf Sara in Amsterdam, the Poznań Supercompute Center in Poznań, and the Jülich Supercompute Center in Jülich. So basically, you already see that this is sort of a multiple location data lakey setup, right? This is where I'm going here. We have been generating 7 petabytes a year for a while now. I know that in specifically this community, this is not a number I'm going to impress many people with. And you see sort of that while we are ramping up, well, the amount of data we have stored has been gone up. So for this work package, we actually we found ourselves a use case. I'm missing half the logos here, but I can probably tell you what it's supposed to say. So what we draw here very simply, so actually we split it in multiple use cases, but I'll present it in one because it's basically the whole end-to-end thing that actually is interesting. So the first step is actually to simulate 1 day of ingest. So basically you have a telescope over here, which I don't know what image it should be, but and we basically we took some LOFAR data and started ingesting as if we were observing for a full day into the data lake, and apply the data life cycle to it. Then the next step here is we actually had a processing node over here, and we basically took the data that we ingested from the data lake, or part of it, and we turned that into an image, and we pushed that image back into the data lake. And actually the software we used for that was pushed to the OSSR, which I didn't even mention. Then on the next slide, yes. Then the next step, and now it actually gets really interesting, I think, from the ESCAPE perspective, is we decided to actually take this data back out of the data lake. So what we did actually is we took the science analysis platform and started querying the data lake for that data, and keep a reference of that. And in parallel, we also looked in the virtual observatory. I was almost going to say, because the VO are just really cool standards that provide you access to all sorts of data, including images, to actually get an image from a different wavelength. So we have an image we made ourselves in the data lake, and an image from the Hubble Space Telescope somewhere, which we got through the VO. Those are the 2 images. And then in the science analysis platform, basically the way you do this is you select your data and you put it in what is called a shopping basket, right? In the analogy of a web shop where you put stuff in your shopping basket and then they will ship it to you. unless here you don't have to pay, which is probably an advantage. Next. And so here actually there was a very nice image of a shopping basket surrounding these images, but now you can actually see the images, which is also really cool. And we brought them to an environment that had an interactive environment, and there was a little image of a laptop over here. I'll ask you to use your imagination, please. And on that laptop we did some, let's say the nice thing, right? We had an environment in which we had the shopping basket client that could talk to the science analysis platform, the data lake as a service thing that people will be telling you about later, which had access to the data lake and the virtual observatory tooling that just gives you the standard image and some astronomy software. And we ended up making, it's always nice if you can say our use case ended in one pretty picture. And so in the background, the colored structure is basically the LOFAR image, and the white stuff is the contours of the image from the Hubble telescope. I mean, having a pretty picture is always nice as an outcome of a use case, which means we worked through the whole thing. So then, of course, the question is, how does this input into the LOFAR operations? Well, I think it's fair to say again, right, there is a lot of similarities between the way the data lake is set up and the LOFAR setup. On the other hand, we are a bit less complex than, for example, particle physics. We just don't do backups as opposed to Gareth use case. Many of our observations are of the static sky. But on the other hand, there's a lot of pseudo handwork. Rule-based data management is definitely something that you may actually want to do and have your life cycle really managed. And I think the content delivery and caching that was already mentioned a bit as something that may actually also be interesting for data that's sitting in your data lake and you want to do some processing elsewhere and you want to somehow gain access to part of your data, etc., etc. We haven't, again, small team, big ambitious. This is really something that may be interesting in future incarnations of stuff. So a few things about the future. First of all, EOSC future. So there is actually a use case in EOSC future that touches on LOFAR. I got this image from Danny, who will present it tomorrow. I will wake you up, but I will not tell you all the details. But the idea is they are looking for different types of objects in different catalogs, try to combine these, download the images and do some processing on them. And I added this corner here. I think that there is a lot of links to, again, all the things that have been part of this project, because you need to get the tables, which are actually in the virtual observatory. They have to combine them, and ESAP does support some database and table handling. And of course, you have images which you could put in the data lake to actually manage them. So I will say, see 2 talks tomorrow, actually, because of course this also touches to the VRE from by Enrique and Danny Vol's talk. So make sure you are actually woke up the first session. And then the other thing that is, again, mostly a shout out to a talk that will happen later, is we are involved in the SKA Regional Center development as an institute, Of course, maybe I should have mentioned that in my first slide. LOFAR is not really in this project as an instrument of its own. We are basically an SKA Pathfinder, I think it's called, or I hope. And but we are involved, of course, also in the SKA developments, and there are definitely a lot of links between the prototyping of ESCAPE and the stuff that we are interested in. So again, I'm going to give a shout out to James, who will talk later today, actually. And so I think finishing with reflections on the ESCAPE as a community. So I think the collaboration within the project, I think one of the really cool thing, and I think that actually I can't say it much better than Fabio, the contact with the actual development teams who can help you with fixing stuff and thinking with you about your use cases, that was really useful. And I think also to the future, especially if we would use part of this tooling, it's nice that you have the contacts with these developers and also access points to mention this. Also, I think it's always enlightening to compare your workflow with that of other science cases, because I was both surprised by the number of similarities and the number of differences, actually. It was really nice. I think also the experience with the data lake, well, the whole thinking about data management in a rule-based way, in an automated way, I think that idea already is really nice, that you understand how that works based on some real-life examples, and how such a thing would sort of fit to the environment we have. And one of the things that I actually like is that through the SKA prototyping work, there may actually be, which is very interesting, of course, that the pathfinder gets fed by the prototyping of the instrument it was pathfinding for. But I'm sure that there may actually be some cross-fertilization back through the SKA work as well. I hope this is my last slide. Yes. Oh, well, this is my thank you slides. Again, I was inspired by Gareth, and I thought I can't really put up a list of all the people that I may want to thank. So I say thanks to everybody who fits in these groups.
Okay, thanks to all. So this is my last slide. Important one. The Escape to the Future. I love this title. I really love this title of this conference. I would say the first one is about this challenging future. It is a challenging future because the experiments, the detectors, telescopes, they are getting, I would say, more complex, generating more data. There is more need of distributed computing to reach out to people for open science. This is a challenge. It's also a challenge because in our times there is a need for economies of scale, a need to be a bit more efficient in the way we do computing. So we need to think about a global thing, a global in the term of resources, a global in the sense of knowledge transfer and helping each other into kind of seeing how the future of scientific computing is going. So that's why I think ESCAPE, and in particular my work back at DIOS, acted as an anchor for the scientific community, really in a spirit which was fundamental for success. Is I call it all-together spirit. Because it's true, we were the experiment experts, we had the sites, system manager, and people responsible for the site. We have the people developing software in a common platform, in a common way, fostering dialogue. We were meeting in an honest way to put forward this playground, this pilot data lake to try to understand how we can help the data management, data transfer needs, all of these analysis frameworks, the things that we can do computing. So this was really, ESCAPE was fundamental on that. And also at that time it was difficult. Remember that, we went through pandemics, people didn't lose a bit of energy, not a single bit of energy, and we moved forward to that. So this was really, I would say, something to put up from. As was mentioned by my colleagues here in the panel, but also I think it's a common feeling in ESCAPE. Having something, a framework that put in place these novel tools and novel services for data management with the opportunity to influence on its evolution and its development was fundamental. We learned from astroparticle, from radio astronomy, from gravitational wave. We learned things that we were kind of not first-hand experiencing in high-energy physics. I come from high-energy physics. So this kind of cross-fertilization across science was fundamental to also to open and be able to steer the evolution of these tools. The Rusho data management system is now quite a lot participated with people from new scientific communities, which is pushing the development in terms of enriching the metadata, enriching a bit the hierarchy. So this is fundamental also to make these tools advisable or can fit other models. Another aspect is the collaboration agreement. I think ESCAPE, the momentum and the energy is not finished at all. So, okay, the project is over. The time of the project is basically gone. But the sheer need to really keep the community, because the needs are identified. There is a common focus from the communities I mentioned before, experiment sites and software developer. There is the need to continue collaborating, because the benefit of being together and being kept as a community give us quite a lot of strength. That's why the collaboration agreement that is upcoming will provide the fundamental framework to continue these activities, and also with the right approach, which is the science-focused, science-based, bottom-up, all together working on something that is fundamental for us. And then, of course, once you identify the need of the sciences, this is something that you can defend and you can put up front in other projects and other frameworks. So I finished my slide with two actions that we think is fundamental now that we are wrapping up ESCAPE. The first one, I hinted before, is just to keep the current engagement with our research infrastructure, ESFRIs and experiments. Focusing efforts on well-identified and common needs. We identified 3 when we wrap up the work package. The first one is, of course, in high-level data management systems and file transfer services, this RUSHO, FTS, and information systems to be able to do high-level data management. Open the door to very complex data management, but also providing, I would say, providing the feeling that if you want to use this big data infrastructure just as a user, as a cloud-like service, you are also entitled. So users might see this as a simple endpoint, while the experiment experts has a plethora of tools to do high-level data management. This is one of the streams, one of the force that is continuing, and this is the communities together working on that. The second one is the data lake model, and it has been mentioned here. Content delivery network, caching, buffering, connecting computing infrastructure, connecting analysis platform, connecting analysis facilities, notebook service, and open science with the big data of the experiment is fundamental. So this data lake, the data lake model, is something where the big data files, the big volumes are kept there, but we need the connection to this. And this is what this is second point about all of these caches, the content delivery, the way to make this data useful, not only by the hardcore experiments that are doing reprocessing, but all the community, the scientifics, also the people doing PhDs that might be benefiting of these frameworks also in terms of resources. We need to plug easily whatever computing resource we are given, HPCs, clouds, hybrid sites, computing systems that appear in universities that you can use it on the fly for 3 months, 1 month, 2 years, no matter what. We need to identify common things, common tools to integrate them easily and quick. Third one is the consolidation of an authorization and authentication infrastructure. This is common. This is the first building block of a community. This should be something that is transparent not only for the users, but to really harness the different services and harness the resources. The authentication should be something transparent, but also a common level of trust, which is highly valued. So that's why there is this common efforts now between ESCAPE, EOS Future, and other projects, and other like Phoenix and the performance computing centers to have something that is as a commonality. Last but not least is the action 2, which is expand collaboration and foster involvement with other scientific communities. Besides also the different science clusters, there are communities that might be benefiting on that. And this is one of the outcomes of the many reviews that we should put up front what we have been doing in ESCAPE in other communities. Fundamental. We reached some of the we had quite a close connection with panels. We have close connection with other experiments and scientific communities, but need to foster that. The last but not least is to keep the involvement in the European community projects and initiatives. This is happening. The clear case is the EOS Future, but there are many, and there are many to come. So we should remain as a community to foster this and continue working on that. Having said that, just my last slide is just I was having a chat with a colleague last week, and this is something that came out of our hands. So just to say that many things that has been mentioned during the talk, AI, analysis, platform, storages, HPCs, clouds, etc., is in this picture. So this is very challenging. This is now in the framework and in the hands on many people. So this is really what scientific computing will be doing. And with this, I think I finish. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Xavier. Hi, everyone. I'm Silvana. Sorry, I missed earlier. Hi, Giovanni, Ian. We're ready for the break. Before we move out, we have a packed agenda today and tomorrow. I did want to say something about Jan. I'm sorry about your slides that the formatting was out, but we'll make sure that all the correct slides are up after the event, so you can obviously download the corrected version for that. Now, I would like to ask Jutta to come back at 11:30. We do start back at 11:35 sharp. Coffee is outside. I think some of you saw that already around the corner, which is, so you need to run there, actually, and run back. I would like to just add at one point, if I may, Xavier, to the linking the communities. Remember, we do have the nice LOFA use case with the connection with CS3. We have the very nice EOSC in practice story that's come out as a solution to that. So the linking is there and very apparent, and so I just wanted to underline that so we don't forget. Okay, thank you then. Back here at 11:35. Thank you. So whilst we're all getting comfortable in our seats, because we're going to start in 1 minute, the next session is ESCAPE OSSR, which stands for Open Source Scientific and Software Repository, fostering collaborations to create fair software for science. I don't know if you're aware, but there's an incredibly important workshop happening in Brussels, organised by DG Connect, 2nd of December, all on open source. And I'm wondering whether we can actually select a couple of representatives from this community to actually take there. On trusted information, on AI, on a series of different topics, but the overarching theme is OS. So with that, I'm going to introduce your chair to this session. So hello, Jutta Schnabel, who's working on open science for the KM3 net collaboration at ESAP. So I'm going to pass the floor directly on to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And without further ado, let's start with the session. So we have 55 minutes to get to know the Open Service and Software Repository. And first of all, many thanks again, as always, because it's been a great collaborative effort here. And I just want to point out, because they're not sitting here at the very beginning, that we had organized these things into subtasks. And some of the subtask leaders that are also present here didn't make it on the stage. So I just want to have a very special thanks to Cristiano Bozza, who did the common approaches in software for software and services, Elena Kurko, who did the foundation of competence for software and services innovation. So we have great titles for that. And last but not least, to Thomas Villaume, who did the implementation. So they actually making the OSSR a real thing work package. In this session, we're going to give you first a short overview by Kai Graf, who was heading this project part. And then secondly, we have 3 contributions, which I think show quite nicely the different aspects that we can get out of the OSSR. One's experimental benefits, which we will have a closer look looking at Jive. The use of OSSR in a wider community, with an example from FAIR, and the integration of OSSR activities in cooperations, which will be more presented from a CTA point of view. And so starting with the overview will be given by Kai Graf. He's a senior researcher and general manager at ECAP, and comes from the KM3net neutrino experiment, where he is also the software coordinator. And he's already got a long list of different activities, especially in the EOSC framework. So as part of the architecture working group and the EOSC-Association task force on infrastructure for quality research software, long titles there. But he's here in his competence as the lead of the working group. So Kai, I'll just hand over straight to you.
Thanks a lot, Jutta. Okay, let me see whether I get that going. Okay, yeah, so let's start with the open software in the EOSC and our OSSR. So you already have seen the EOSC cell today quite a lot, and there should be a line around the OSSR here, so our catalog and repository for resources. And as we already have heard, we enriched that, of course. It's not only about software, it's about data sets, it's about software and services, about tutorials, trainings, and also about publications in a general sense. Okay, so that's over-exaggerated what I wrote there, but let me point, what's the status before ESCAPE, and what did we do, or what was our vision when we set up the OSSR? So in the EOSC scheme, software was rarely named at all, so it was second to data in the regime. We had a diverse status of open software, and mostly not open scientific software within the community, down to really community-driven software and to individual software on other regimes, down to closed software or even licensed software sometimes.
We have cross-experiment analysis, usually done via MOUs with trying to share as low data and software as necessary between several experiments. We had modern approaches, but usually they were really handled individually and exchanged at some meetings maybe, but not in a daily work. So there was not really an extent cross-fertilization in those modern approaches that we have in software. We had also no standard for metadata and the archival, and of course no link to the EOSC for the software community there. So we set up and said, okay, we need an OSSR as a reliable and sustainable open access repository to share our scientific software to the community and of course beyond, so that we can really do open science, because science without software and only data is simply not doable. It should house all our community software and services for the data processing as well as the analysis, and also data sets, user supports, and so forth, as I already said before. Okay, but then you think, oh, this sounds only like an infrastructure, but it should be ESFRI based. It's all about the ESFRI based. And actually having an infrastructure without filling it from the daily use, the science in our ESFRIs would make no sense. So we have two parts in the OSSR. The one is really the implementation of the repository. I will go to that. And the other parts are the daily life, how to build software, cross-fertilize, go further, and that's what my colleagues will later on go on. So all our objectives in the software was really to facilitate the development and deployment exposure of our softwares, to have interoperability and software reuse where it's possible, and cross-fertilize between the different ESFRIs, have an open innovation environment for standards, discuss about workflows and data formats, but also regulations and best practices for novel software for our multi-messenger and multi-pro data. But also to, of course, link our community to the EOSC and vice versa, link the EOSC also to our community. But last but not least, training code custodians that can really go further with the software and those ideas that we established here, and at the same time also raise their visibility. Developing code is also a scientific task, and it should be acknowledged, and we are trying to raise that. We're all doing that by enabling, with the aim of enabling open science, but software as a first-class citizen there. It's always a community-based and inclusive approach. We are not putting something on top. Of course, the FAIR principle and the federation were appropriate. Okay, so now how does the OSSR, so really the infrastructure of the repository, look like? First of all, from a user's view, so you can go here and go to our web page, and you see our web page here, which will also grow over time, and you can find also related project and collections there. The software itself, or if you search, you will go to our repository, which is hosted by Zenodo from CERN. Actually, you can find all the different software there, their descriptions, but also their identifiers, their links to publication, but also the authors, so to raise the incentive to create software there. And you can also come from the other side. That's mainly not what the individual user will do from our communities. They will go through their individual ESFRI platforms, but you can come from the other side, from the EOSC, and search for our software as well. To complement that, we have also our software schools, where we really teach how do you develop a software to end up as a high-quality software in here. So just to flash the buzzwords, so here's our entry, then there we have our federation, a long-term supported archive, the EOSC integration, as well as the training aspect. Now, from the other side, if you're a provider and you want to provide software to the EOSC, we have a defined onboarding flow that is actually also handled by an onboarding group. So it's really a moderated flow that we have there. So you develop your software in a GitLab. You push the source code and update it if you need to. The important thing is that you tag it, you make a release, you add metadata, and you let the continuous integration do the rest. At the same time, for reproducibility, you build a container image, and you publish that if you want, or you register it to Docker. And last of the least, that is automatically then integrate into the Escape EOSC cell and EOS in general. For that, we implemented a library that you can use now, all the ESFRIs can use to actually go through all this workflow in an automatic way. So buzzwords again, this is about open source, this is about reprocessing, our long-term support, and our integration again. So what do we have in OSSR today? So directly, if you go to the Zenodo community that we have, you see we already listed, but we are collecting. You heard that already, and I will come to that also. But it's already also aggregated by the open air provider who aggregates that with enrichments, because searching for linked publications to our software and services and putting all that together. Okay, and actually that leads me to the cross-fertilization and the ESFRI software developments, and with that I hand over to Jutta again.
Yeah, thanks for the overview and thanks for making the time. Great. And that actually leads us right into these three detailed presentations. And we will start with Des Small, who is from JIVE and is a scientific software engineer at JIVE, so at the Joint Institute for Very Long Baseline Array. And he's been working on dynamical system at Bristol University and on fluid models for Dyson. And with that experience, he's now going to introduce the CASA improvements for the VLBI. So.
This is the pointer? Yeah, and that's the slidey thing. Okay. So first, I get the, there are 5 of us here from JIVE today. There's 3 software engineers and 1 manager and a director, so we've come in force. But I'm first, so I get the opportunity, which I'm going to seize, of introducing JIVE and the EVN, which is closely related but complicatedly, conceptually distinct from JIVE. So let's start with the EVN. Can I go back? Yes, surely. Can I go back? Yeah. Wrong button, sorry. So the EVN is a collection of radio antennas that are independently built, maintained, and operated by their relevant institutions and national governments. So we don't own our instrument, we kind of borrow it. In a year, there were 3 distinct sessions where the EVN takes over all these instruments and operates them on an open skies policy for scientists to submit proposals and look at whatever they choose to look at. So JIVE is essentially a service organization for the EVN. The EVN itself is not a legal entity. JIVE is a legal entity. It's a European Research Infrastructure Consortium, or ERIC. And the EVN webpage and the EVN Wikipedia entry both agree that JIVE is a central organization of the EVN. So I guess that's uncontroversial to say. These things can get a little bit political, but that seems to be allowed to say. This is an image by my colleague Paul Boven showing you. Because JIVE started out as a joint institute for VLBI in Europe, VLBI being very long baseline interferometry, and it only gets worse from there, because we're now not, you can see that, I've done it again. Oh, sorry. This bit is in Europe in a broad sense, but you see there are various dishes that are not in Europe, and South Africa is not really in Eurasia either, but we kind of, well, you know, we currently call ourselves in, what is it, Eurasia? Something? Anyway, it's sort of global, except that if you want to do, there's like this big empty patch, which is where the USA has its own instruments, which we sometimes collaborate with, but we are independent of them. So that's Jive and the EVN. And we are involved at every stage of the design and execution of experiments. We advise scientists when they want to propose something. We tell them, we help them develop a schedule to do that. We then collect the data from the telescopes and we correlate it, and we maintain our own software correlator with our own hardware to do all that. And we also support users in data reduction, which was originally done in a package called APES, which is a venerable Fortran package, but increasingly we're using CASA, which is a more recent C++ and Python-based package, and that's, of course, the subject of my talk. Now, you might be wondering, we've got all these telescopes producing data, getting it to us. Do we use data lakes? Do we use, clouds? No, we don't. And that was not in scope for ESCAPE. So maybe one day we will do that, but at the moment we used to ship tapes from the telescopes. They'd record stuff to magnetic tape and post it to us. Then we went to using hard disk drives with the same thing going in the post. Now, most of the time, data is stored in buffers at the local telescope and then transmitted over electronic networks to us, but that's using our own protocols, our own storage, our own hardware, our own everything. Everything is bespoke, and for the foreseeable future, it's probably going to stay that way. So, no, it's been fascinating to hear what people are doing with other mechanisms, and it's always nice to cross-pollinate, but at the moment, that's all. You can see our old, this is an old picture with our old tape drives there, but which are not really in use anymore. So now CASA, I get to introduce CASA too, because we didn't invent CASA, we are not the main maintainers of CASA. CASA has a history, originally, I believe, developed for the VLA in America, which is this instrument to the left in its compact configuration. And later it has become adopted by the ALMA telescope, which is a consortium of various legal entities, which I'm not going to attempt to reproduce here. But the key thing is that it's used by ALMA in their pipeline, and ALMA's policy intent was that scientists wouldn't need to reduce the data themselves. There would be a pipeline developed which would run on the data and deliver science-ready data products to the scientists who submitted proposals. And because that pipeline is in CASA, and because ESO, one of the main partners in CASA, is a contract, as a treaty organization, the upshot is that developing CASA means you can't break things. They get very, very angry if you break things. And their software engineering framework is designed that you can't break things, or, it takes quite a lot of effort to break things. So I've said most of that, I think. And it's in C++ and Python, and that's going to become relevant because one of our actual contribution to the OSSR is a wrapping of CASA with a Jupyter notebook, and that's the product that is containerized and submitted to the OSSR. But our Kempimo is here, and he's going to talk about that in detail himself, so I'm just setting the background for that. And originally, the ALMA and the VLA, they're both connected element arrays, right? So they share, they're on one site, they're one thing. And that's a different environment from what we're trying to do, which is connect telescopes from all over the world, which have their own independent clocks and their own very different view of the sky sometimes. So what happened next was, we'll get to that later. What happened next is we added the features to do that, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, the development process, and one of the things that we've been able to do in the ESCAPE project is cross-fertilize how software practices can best be implemented. And I think the CASA one is very mature, very stable, and pretty good. It's quite heavyweight, but it needs to be quite heavyweight. So what happens is every feature and every bug fix gets its own ticket in the JIRA ticketing system, which is distinct from the help desk ticketing system. And the ticket defines the scope of what you're trying to do. And in order to get each ticket comes with it, makes a Git branch associated with it. And for that Git branch to be merged into the main code base, you need to have verification stages, which involves regular unit tests and regression tests on sample data. It also needs a separate validation step by somebody who's not involved in developing the code, an actual scientist, ideally. And then the scientist is given packages that are automatically built by the development system, and so you can just give them a link to the package that they can run the validation tests they want to run on and report that it works. So this is really good, and it's all, well, it's for a number of reasons, but it has the enormous advantage that you won't break ALMA along the way. And so, next. So VLBI was not included in CASA until relatively recently, before ESCAPE, but relatively recently. They always wanted to do it, but they never had the personnel resources to commit to doing that. So we did it. And we did it originally in the Black Hole Cam project, which is another EU-funded project. And it produced this image, which you may perhaps have seen elsewhere. And the CASA pipeline was one of the pipelines used to check the calibration of the data that was used to create that image. And ever since then, we've been working on new features, expanding the CASA support for VLBI, enhancing it, making it better, faster, cheaper where possible. And recently, we've done things like allow you to select a UV range that you want to apply the fringe fit task to. I mainly work on the fringe fitting task, which I'm not going to explain in detail. Because if you aren't doing VLBI, you don't want to know, and if you are doing VLBI, you already know. But it just calibrates the atmospheric disturbances that you might experience in different instruments, different telescopes. So, and I've added support for you combining polarizations, because sometimes you have a very weak source, and you can calibrate it better if you can combine the data from the two different polarizations. So I continue to work on things like that. Now, we've discussed, well, it's been mentioned a couple of times that one issue in modern science is that it can be difficult for people who mainly work on software to get accredited, because we're working in academia, and the currency of academia is papers and citations, and if you don't have those, if your work doesn't result in those, then you have a problem. Okay, I'll be very quick. So we've written 2 recent papers during the lifetime of the ESCAPE project. And those papers are cited in the Zenodo metadata, so everyone who gets the Zenodo packaging has access, is informed that we would like them to cite it like this if they're in the mood to cite us at all. So that's what we've and this is an example of the notebook running in the cloud, which I was going to discuss. And we use that in training. We've done a couple of training programs while we've been in ESCAPE, one just for CASA VLBI and a recent one for the ERIS summer school. And that used CASA in the cloud as the prototype service, hosted at Jive in the short term, but we are looking to move that hosting elsewhere. And I think that's everything. So, I'm on time. Do you have questions now, or is it questions later? Questions now or later?
No, later. Yeah, this is why we're hurrying a bit through it, so we have the 5 minutes in the end for questions. Thanks, Des, and going right to the next speaker, who is Mohammed Al-Turani, who is the head of the software development for the experiment group at the GSI Helmholtz Center for Heavy Ion Research. And he's working in FAIR, so the Facility for Antiproton and Ion Research, and there is responsible for HPC clusters and the online data reconstruction in the FAIR experiment, and is also a main designer of and author of the online and offline data reconstruction framework for the ALICE experiment at CERN. And what is also becoming interesting here is leading the subtopic, the digital scientific methods in the topic data management and analysis within the Helmholtz research program, Matter and Technology, where we can see the good cross-fertilization examples here. So, the floor is yours.
So, hello. Where I go? Okay. So, thanks for letting me explain you a little bit what we are doing with ESCAPE and the DMR and in the Helmholtz. So I have 10 minutes, so I will not go through all the stuff. I will try to summarize it very fast. So FAIR and the GSI, the FAIR facility is being built now. And it covers really a lot of physics and many aspects of physics, from hadron physics to nuclear structure physics, also the QCD phase transition and atomic and biology. So I cannot go through all this, but from the computing point of view, the challenge is we are facing something like 1 terabyte per second, which will come to our online farms, and we have to deal with something like 35 petabyte per year on disk, and with various collaborations, a lot of experiment, from very small experiment to CERN-like experiment and high energy like the high energy physics community, which is also partially involved. And to join all this together is really the challenge. And what we realized from the beginning, you cannot do this only with postdocs and PhD students. You need IT experts, and you have to bring this IT expert with the physicist, and you have to solve the problem that both of them are speaking different languages, and first they have to match. They have to understand what they have to do with each other and how to collaborate. And we were looking also to the problems at CERN, which are not very much different. That's why we collaborate with CERN and we work with ALICE. There is a large collaboration with ALICE. We have a large group from the ALICE for the physics, but also for the computing. And during the run now, our software and what we develop together with ALICE is really taking data. So this 3 terabytes per second are really coming now, and we are taking them and analyzing them. So for Panda and CPM, it will be a little bit smaller, but it is also the same challenge. So we have a huge rate of data which has to be handled online, high throughput data processing. We have to use heterogeneous computing, complex data analysis, all the terms you like, you can just put them there, they will fit. And we have to deal with really such kind of problem. Of course, for the ALICE, there are some constraints because it's running now. For the fair, we will not take everything with us. We have to think about the future. We have to think how to use our experience in ALICE and at CERN to get better results. So at the same time, the GSI is member of the Helmholtz Association. We have the research field META. We have to deal also with our colleagues from other institutes within the Helmholtz. We have to apply synergy at every place and everywhere. And there is, of course, digitalization is the buzzword which you hear everywhere. And I just wanted to show you a few things and then come back why the OSSR was very good for us and why we went for that. So from one side is the online and complex software development, which we need for simulation, reconstruction, and all this stuff. From the other side, we have the Helmholtz Association and the experiments, which are not really CERN-like and HIP-like experiment, but this community is also at the GSI and FAIR. And then within this research field META, we have the analysis, the data management and analysis, which connect also to the accelerator software development and the accelerator activities at the GSI and within the Helmholtz. And there the GSI is leading this. And we have to deal, of course, like everybody, with artificial intelligence, exascale computing, high throughput, quantum computing, all the topics you like. So all this is presented and actively worked on within the Helmholtz. And of course, the punch for NFDI is the NFDI project in Germany is one of the most active projects supported there for the infrastructure, and we are also part of this. There are many task areas which overlap with ESCAPE, which overlap with all the other projects we have, and we were searching for synergy here and there and within the ESCAPE. And at this point, looking at all these activities and all these communities we are dealing with was the question, of course, what is OSSR good for us? And why should we use this and even encourage the colleagues to use it and to be part of it? And the first thing is, of course, you need to have a single point of entry for your software, and it is not really a software catalog. We need more. We need the workflows. We need the continuous integration and the environment. Because if I want to sell my software to a new community, it is not enough to tell them I developed a great software. You can find it on GitHub. You need to give more. They have to be able to test this software in very, very short time without a lot of effort and realize themselves the advantage of such a software. And that for us was the biggest advantage of the OSSR. We participated in the development, of course, and in the creation of the OSSR, but we wanted to go further. So what have we done up to now? So we have 3 projects which are used by different experiments, by many experiments within our community and outside. So we onboarded them, and we show the people it's a very nice thing, because when you start onboarding, it is not just adding a software to this. You have to take care of many other aspects which usually the developer don't like to think about it. I need to have a license, a valid license. I need to have a public repository. I have to deliver some examples. The software will be used by non-experts and all this stuff. And that's what we push the people to do, and they did it. And we already onboarded the 3 of these packages. And then we went to our colleagues in the photon and the nuclear structural community, and we discussed with them, because there we have to deliver also such a kind of a repository, which is very similar. And we said, why should we do that? Let's work together and use the OSSR also for the DMR, for the Helmholtz Association. And this we managed to do. It is ongoing. We did it. We onboard the first project from the DMR, and the GSI will take care of the onboarding process, because you have to give a talk, you have to do the curation and all this stuff. So we will help, and we will extend this. So what we will do next? Within the DMR, we define a list of projects, and of course, different community, different requirement. The first thing which come, of course, we need to handle the data which is used, for example, to train the machine learning stuff. It needs to be also to be in the same repository. But these are very small technical details which will be solved easily. And then we went further within the Helmholtz Association. There is this project HEFIS, Helmholtz Federation IT Services, and they were also thinking about something in the same direction, without the curation, without the containerization, without all the workflows, but they wanted to have a very nice catalog where you can find all this. They built already something like that, and there we discussed with the colleagues, and we convinced them that the OSSR is also a very nice way to do that, and we are going to integrate them also within this activity. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed. So we move, last but not least, to the contribution by Matthias Füßling, who is the coordinator of the Science User Support System in the computing department of the CTAO. The Cherenkov Telescope Array organization. And as a former member of HES, has also gathered quite an experience there with the software development and data acquisition systems. So, hand over.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so the purpose of my talk is to highlight a few aspects on the OSSR, and especially on cross-fertilization, or how I would phrase it, working together for software development and the libraries from the perspective of the observatory of CTAO. But first, let me introduce a few principles why open research software is important for an observatory. So as an open, such as CTAO, so we are an open observatory, so really our users are the whole science community, not only those who are experts in, for example, gamma ray data analysis and already accustomed to the tools itself. We also want to support open science and fair principles, of course. And as an observatory, we have essentially 2 main tasks that is practically shared by many observatories. So one is what I would call a service task. So we acquire the raw data, petabytes of it. We process and calibrate the raw data up to open science ready data that is then given out to the science users. And this service task includes processing, calibration, and simulation. And while these workflows are not shared with the external CTAO users, still we want to share the software so that in principle an outsider could reproduce the software. So that gives credibility to the data, but also also we are able to share these software with maybe other ESFRIs that are involved in similar processing tasks, so to increase commonalities here. But the main task of the observatory is certainly to provide then the high quality science-ready data and the software to analyze them. So from photon lists up to sky maps, light curves, etc., to the external users. And there the main point is that the software is as important as the data itself. Without a proper software, users will not be happy. Then obviously we need to observe that we are now working and building these observatories in the area of multi-messenger astrophysics, which is a key to the understanding of the universe. So aim for interoperability of data products as well as science software is important for us. And lastly, a point that we should not forget, many of the tools of CTO software will be based on open community-based software projects. One example is the GammaPipe software package, which is on the base of the science tool that CTO will build and give out to the community. So interacting with these developer communities is as important for us in building the software. Now, how does OSSR come into play here? So one thing is that we expect that there will be new ways for users to approach science. And that is, they will not only look for data, they might also look for software and then discover what can you do with this software. Or they might discover workflows, analysis workflows they want to share, they want to collaborate based on the workflows itself. Then we also expect that obviously there will be a large range on users to access software. So obviously first point of contact for CTO-specific data and software will always be the CTO Science Portal, we guess. But for all those cross-ESFRI workflows, including multi-messenger, one might think that such OSSR or EOSC will play an important role. And we want our software to appear there. So what OSSR provides, and I will go through in the talk a few items of this, standards, recommendations, guidelines for creating software and exposing it on the OSSR. It has a repository to easily find software and workflows, and it's a forum for development and fertilization. I will come back to this later. And so we hope with this that we obviously will enlarge the user base and also enable new science. So now moving on to the actual developments, and there we start with software developments. So one thing to notice first, CTO is still under construction, so no official software has been uploaded yet, but we used the community-based software project that we are involved in. For example, GammaPi, so the basis for the science tools, but also other libraries for machine learning or modeling of sources. And one of the test cases here was to actually go through the procedure of the software onboarding, which already was a very nice test for OSSR, but also for these software projects to increase their quality. Second, we focused then on cross-ESFRI software developments that aimed for interoperability of software projects, and I will talk about these two, Concordia and Wayfire, in the next slides. And this is already also continued in EOSC Future related to test science projects. And one example is this multi-messenger analysis pipeline that is built here for AGN models, and Sheridan can give you more information on that. So now I give you two examples for this cross-ESFRI software development. So one was in the work package of commonalities, where essentially CAME3net and CTO worked together to provide a common software with let's say, a turnkey containerized system where you can simulate air showers and then derive the instrument response from that for both CAME3net and CTO. And the idea was really to provide an easy-to-use simulation system for external users, so they do not need to understand all the full complexities of installing and using Corsica itself. So what you get is, for example, here, an easy way to configure the Corsica and then to derive the instrument response functions. And this can already also be included in the batch processing, which I will talk about in the talk for the science analysis platform later. And this really hopes that these workflows are easily available for the external users and make it more accessible. The other example is the Wayfire project, which is an analysis platform for multi-messenger data. So you get different data from different wavelengths into a common platform, you analyze them, and you generate alerts, light curves, and classification of that. And this work here was done to extend this platform to include new methods of machine learning. So this was done in this innovative workflow task group led by Elena. And the idea was here to have these to try out to get this together. But before you actually concentrate on the machine learning approach itself, you need to understand what goes in. And this is data from different wavelengths, and you need to think about the interoperability of the data itself, but also of the software itself to bring the data together, the metadata, the instrument response functions, even also including physics questions like how to model them. And that was part all of this workflow. That also connects to CIVO and to, for example, the open gamma ray data format, which is also another initiative in that regard. But moving on from the software development itself, I want to highlight two other aspects. One is the metadata. Our research software, as any, I guess, will follow FAIR principles. So metadata is an important part of that. So that makes the software findable, the workflows reproducible if you include provenance information, but also it gives contributions to those who actually work on the software, especially if you keep in mind the community-based approach. And OSSR work was done to extend this metadata scheme to not only describe the software itself, but also how to use it, in which workflows, and the environment of it. And this has become part of the recommendations actually from ESCAPE to CTO to build their software in a better way. And this is one figure that Thomas provided, where you can see that the software metadata was clustered, or you can see different clusters of the metadata. One is to describe the software, who contributed to the software, but also how it can be reused, and essentially also how to connect to other work using keywords, where you can then search for different softwares and see how they combine, or how to run the software in which environments, what do you need to provide as part of the software platform. That is an important extension, I think, of the metadata approach. And the last topic that I would like to mention is, for us, it became really important that OSSR is more than just a repository. Yeah, it's really also a forum and a school for both the software developers as well as the users. So on one hand, you have schools and trainings organized by ESFRIs, by the OSSR key people. That is essential for early career development, and it's really, as you can see here in the number of participants, a worldwide approach where you get connections to the worldwide users. All of this is openly accessible, so it is a repository of training in schools as well. And in addition, it brings together the developers of the different community projects together with the ESFRI software developments, and you can talk about a wide range of topics and help to increase the quality of the research software itself to make it better, performant, and more widely used. And with this, I would like to close that, we contributed to the development of the OSSR itself, we participated in the software developments, but really OSSR shows a great potential for increasing our user base, provides essential recommendations and guidelines. It's more than a repository, and we're really looking forward that this continues beyond the end of the project phase. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matthias, and all the speakers. So that leaves us 5 minutes for questions. What? There's a future slide? Yeah. I'm sorry, then I forgot one slide.
I know I'm between you and the lunch break, but we're at 11 minutes here in the counter. You cannot see it, but.
Sorry, these were all the contributors I forgot to mention, obviously.
here are the contributors from Matthias still. So, and the summer school, and now there is OSSR to the future. So I will not thank all the partners of OSSR yet, because we have our final workshop coming up in November, 15th to 17th, and if I thank you now, you will run all the way. But I will thank all the partners, because I know that all the partners in ESCAPE have worked quite well together across all the work packages, and that was, I think, nicely shown also now that in OSSR we had horizontal and vertical cross-fertilization from software development to really using our infrastructure somewhere else to cross work between the partners, and that worked out very, very well. So how can we go from there to the future and keep the drive on? So, of course, we have still some technical developments. We need to work and extend the metadata scheme, work there with the EOSC together, where there are also working groups on that. We need to extend our library. We heard the VRE is not yet fully implemented. We also need to support that and integrate the analysis platform and the research environment in EOSC Future. We, of course, also thought about how we sustain OSSR. We said we want a sustainable repository. It doesn't help to have a repository and that will simply slide away in the future. So from the beginning, the infrastructure was there to be sustainable by choice and design. You see we use Zenodo, we use a GitLab integration, we have an open community software a library to bring that all together. But we also have already an interest group of the members to have that addition, the custodians, so the onboarding group that has formed and wants to push forward that surplus that we have, not only to be a repository, but to have a complete workflow there going into the future. Of course, we should try to keep the momentum in the group for this cross-fertilization and cooperation across all the ESFRIs as we have here. And that is actually a part of the ESCAPE collaboration that has formed, but we will hear more about that. But of course, not only keeping, but also enlarging the scope. We are planning for an engagement in that call that Giovanni already introduced about the development of a community-based approach for the software quality. And also, like Ian said, to become part of the EOSC exchange layer so that we are a horizontal service in the EOSC. And last but not least, again, what we heard we should strive to collect and preserve all the software and services that we developed all together in ESCAPE, in OSSR, because there it is really sustained and long-term available, also to be reused in the future. And with that, I thank you and hand over to Jutta again.
That doesn't work. It does. So if there are any questions, please, I suppose, raise your real hand or your virtual one. I don't know if there are any questions online. I see one in the room back here. There's a question there. Yeah.
I was wondering about CI. Do you provide it? Is there a common way to have it, or is it everyone does their own and then on board? How does it work?
Okay, yeah. So of course, as we said, we are federating. We are using the CNRS provided GitLab instance at IN de Petra at the computing center in Lyon, where we have actually simply a template that you clone and you have the full CI, including, of course, the onboarding to the OSSR included. But you can also simply use your own CI or GitHub instance that you have, clone the template there and run it there and use our EOSSR library to onboard.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
No? Okay, no, there isn't. Does anyone else have a question? If not, I have one. Yeah, Isabel, go. No, I'll do mine after.
So probably it's one question to Matthias and open to everyone. But on your Corsica and DIDAC example, I think it's quite interesting because it's the link to deploy software code into the computing resources. How do you see this evolving, and how inclusive do you think this can be in the scientific community with other experiments joining similar approaches?
I think that, potentially it can be very inclusive, right? There's many ways on many more users of Corsica itself, for example. Obviously, the purpose is rather different maybe in the endpoint, but the beginning on how to run Corsica, for example, can be, I think, extremely inclusive. We started here with KM3net and CTO because there's special similarities that brings these two observatories and experiments closer together. So in terms of instrument response function, how we see the sky, etc. So that's a bit far away than other communities, but I don't see a point why we should stop to create, use cases for that go beyond that. But maybe Kai.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I also, from a personal experience, quite a lot, this Corsica, quite a lot use it as a throwaway production. I think that what we did here is at least to have two partners, but that should be enlarged to make a production and reuse it afterwards. And I think that's something we are talking about energy conservation. That's something that we should really think about. And the implementation with the Concordia is really a one that we can step on to and work on.
Giovanni?
Kai, development of community-based approaches can probably suggest the deployment of services to go further than repository, to make a permanent catalog, and so on and so forth. But what I feel like is that, as you said about sustaining that, my comment, first of all, is that we should try to continue applying the escape model to software specific, in the sense that, do you remember that in our project we talk about foundation approach? Because I believe, and as Mohammed was saying before, I really convinced that what matters here is the organization, community at large organization-based approach. How do we want to share the workflow, the know-how, how we want to progress together. We should not wait years to come back and say that probably is the time to build the data lake together. No, we start now the organization. Now my question is, you know that in high energy physics a foundation exists. That is the HEP Software Foundation. But it's limited. It is under the perimeter of high energy physics, central to CERN, and it is global, international. What's the goal according to you? What we should do?
No, actually, yeah, we are discussing already how we can actually cooperate there. We have discussed from the beginning, but COVID hit us all in that respect, of course, that we didn't meet so much in meetings. But yes, we need to really think about that, and that's why we have the HSF invited also to our final workshop and discuss there how we can integrate. And as you said, we need really to base from existing software and see how we build on that and how we improve on that. That's why we said we have this twofold approach in OSSR, and I think that's really successful. And I think also that such a community-based effort as HSF is exactly built around that, because there's the interest and then there's the surplus scene. And in that, we need to really go for it together, hopefully, of course, within our EOSC collaboration, but also beyond that.
I have something linked actually to what Giovanni's just said in terms of the community part. Now, I don't know if we can see who's online, but tomorrow you'll see in the agenda there's a session related to the science clusters and EOSC. We also have tomorrow René Book, who's the CTO of the EOSC-Association. But linking back to how we can pull up the efforts that have come out from ESCAPE. And I want to go back to Mohammed's presentation, where you mentioned OSSR being introduced in the Helmholtz Association through HIFIS. I was there recently evaluating the HIFIS platform. So I don't know in how many of the 18 institutions of Helmholtz OSSR is going to be introduced to, but a question came up to Volker about Helmholtz obviously being a partner with EOSC, okay? And I don't know how many partners there are, over 180 or 190. And I think what would be nice is to understand, you've written, Kay, strive to become part of the EOSC exchange layer. If through the projects we're able to then identify clearly the assets that will then go into EOSC, but then if I'm pouring in money, say as Helmholtz, I want to be able to say tomorrow, okay, whatever the 10,000 I'm paying every year, I'm getting that back because I've got my stamp of OSSR within clearly the EOSC ecosystem that helps build the community and endorse what EOSC is trying to do. So it's not really a question, but more of a comment on how we can clearly rope everything together and how we're working with the communities. But if we sort of put a face to the asset and then to the partner behind EOSC, it makes there's more clarity there, and people will become more, what's the word I'm looking for? They'll have more buy-in to say to the EOSC.
Exactly what we are trying to do with the DMR.
Sorry, the mic's not on?
It should work. Okay, so that's exactly what we are trying to do. So even the projects from the DMR, which will be onboarded in the OSSR, they will have a flag DMR. They will be also identified as Helmholtz. Okay, so and this will give now I am double. This will give the possibility for the visibility also for the other project. We are not only using, we are visible there. Of course, the other thing which came immediately in the OSSR, there is the onboarding process, and Jutta is leading this, and Kai. But when you get a project from the photon physics, from DESY or from Berlin or whatever, you need also some expert who will sit down in this talk on the onboarding process, and that's what we are trying to do, and we integrate now this community from the DMR in this process. So it is still at the beginning. We just collect a list from different institutes, Dresden, Berlin, DESY, which will a project which will be onboarded, and we are creating the committee which will take care of this. And there is the flag DMR, which will be also on the inside the OSSR as part, but to make it visible that this is from the outside.
Sorry, to follow up then. Do we imagine at the end of the EOS future, then the OSSR is going to be within the EOS marketplace or whatever they're going to call it?
It already is. It is already linked in, but we want, of course, the infrastructure to sink in a little deeper than the linking that's currently done via OpenAir. And with that, I think we run into.
Anyone else before lunch? Any questions? No? Yes. Let me give you the mic though, just so people can hear.
Thanks for the first question, because that always steers questions. That's great.
I think that although the different institutes and the university participates in EOSC-Association, it is not the EOSC-Association that can anticipate this kind of needs or this kind of perspective coming from the community. But something that Mohammed is mentioning, but something that we also experience in our own institutes differently, is that around software, we found extremely important to connect locally with computing laboratory, research laboratories, other laboratories in the university to support, to leverage the ESCAPE project and to build up cooperative efforts locally in the institute partner of ESCAPE that participates in changing the approach to software development and the foundation, as we said before. It is important, in my opinion, for software, also discussing with the Commission, the importance of the combination of the European approach and the local, regional approach.
to you.
So, well, thank you very much, Jutta. Thank you for wonderful presentations, really excellent timing as well. We now have our lunch, so can we have a round of applause again for our speakers and chair? Lunch is in the same place as you had the coffee. Now, I do want to remind you that we do have online presentations this afternoon, so we need to manage this, obviously, in a much more, dual manner, but we'll do it. Could I kindly maybe ask after the break that perhaps those in the last line could come forward, maybe, just to give access to that last row, because the technicians need to walk through there. If that's at all possible, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. See you back in an hour. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.